Disney could legally kill you, but only if you have a Disney Plus account.
Oh, man.
You have a Disney Plus, don't you?
I wanted to watch Gravity Falls.
Okay. It's one of the stranger loopholes I've seen for getting away with murder, and we're going to talk about a couple other ones later. But first, let me explain how Disney could keep 150 million people from ever taking them to court. October 5th, 2023. Jeffrey Piccolo, his wife Amy, and his mother are all on vacation at the Walt Disney Resort in Florida. They're going to eat dinner here at the Raglan Road Irish Pub. It's located in Disney Springs, and they picked it out for a very specific reason. Amy had life-threatening food allergies. She couldn't eat dairy, and she couldn't eat nuts. Raglan Road Irish Pub claimed to be super accommodating for guests with severe allergies. In fact, they even said they had an allergy-specific menu. So right when they arrive, they inform the waiter of Amy's allergies. They go through the whole menu, pick out specific items, and confirm with the chef that they can all be made allergen-free. For the most part, it seemed like dinner was going fine. But when the waiter brought out Amy's food, she noticed most of the items on her plate had these little flags in them marked allergen-free. But there were a couple items on there that didn't. So she checked with the waiter again, just to make sure, and the waiter assured her that everything on the plate was safe for her to eat. But he was wrong.
It makes me question who's at fault here. Like, was the waiter just not giving the information? Did the chef lie, or was it just a mistake? Did somebody put it on the wrong grill?
I mean, here's the thing. It might not have been any one person's fault, right? Like, it could have just been a total breakdown in communication. But either way, none of that food on the plate was safe for her to eat. About 45 minutes after dinner, Amy starts having trouble breathing. She knows immediately this is an allergic reaction. So she pulls out her EpiPen, stabs herself, but it was too late. She collapses to the floor, gets rushed to the hospital, and unfortunately, she died later that night. Her cause of death, anaphylaxis. Fast forward to 2024, Jeffrey has now filed a wrongful death suit against Disney and Raglan Road Irish Pub. Disney's response? A motion asking the courts to throw out Jeffrey's lawsuit entirely and force him to settle out of court. All of this because Jeffrey signed up for a free trial of Disney Plus back in 2019.
So you're telling me that they got him, not even on a paid subscription, on a free trial?
On the free trial of Disney Plus. You see, there's some fine print in the terms of use for Disney Plus that says, any dispute between you and us must be resolved by individual binding arbitration. In plain English, you can't take us to court, we're gonna settle this privately. And according to Disney, when Jeffrey signed up for that free trial almost 5 years ago, he waived his right to the wrongful death lawsuit.
That just doesn't even seem related. Like, you know, it's...
Well, that's because it's not.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like, yes, okay, it's still a Disney property, but like, how can you say this online service and us killing your wife at a restaurant are like, that shouldn't be possible?
Jeffrey's lawyers and plenty of other legal experts have all said the same thing. This wouldn't hold up in court. The hearing on Disney's motion wasn't scheduled until October, but it just came out that Disney's abandoning the idea of arbitration altogether. They're gonna let Jeffrey take this case to court.
I mean, as they should, but this feels big time like we were gonna hold to this until the public found out about it.
100% this is a response to backlash.
Yeah.
And just keep in mind, this doesn't stop them from using the same loophole in the future. So in theory, that is how Disney could legally kill you. But I have a question for you now. What if you were going to kill somebody?
Okay, so what you do?
No, that's not what I meant. I was just kind of asking if you had a legal loophole for getting away with it.
Oh, I mean, stand your ground is usually like one of the biggest ones.
Well, we're going to talk about stand your ground a little bit later. But first, I want to tell you about a loophole that's literally built into the U.S. Constitution.
What?
Yeah, and it starts at Yellowstone National Park. Real quick, this loophole was discovered by legal scholar Brian C. Kalt. He wrote about it in his paper, The Perfect Crime. Pretty much everything I'm telling you comes from that paper. Brian is a genius for figuring this out.
I don't know if genius is the right word.
Oh, well, I mean, psychopath,
evil
maybe.
genius is still
evil
a
genius
genius.
is still a genius. Anyway, check out this map of Yellowstone National Park. You can see that most of it is in Wyoming, but there are these tiny slivers that extend into Montana and Idaho. And that 50 square miles across the Idaho border, it's been nicknamed the Zone of Death. And that's where we're going to try to get away with murder.
So there's 50 square miles where murder is legal.
Allegedly. Let me explain how. Before we can get to the loophole, there's two things you need to know. One, Yellowstone is federal land. That means that Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, they can't enforce their state laws there. It's under federal control. And two, Yellowstone had to be assigned to a federal district. So rather than split up the tiny amounts of land that extend across state borders, they just put the entirety of Yellowstone Park in the District of Wyoming. It's actually the only district that contains land in multiple states. Let's say that you're in the Idaho section of Yellowstone, that 50 square miles, and you invite your worst enemy out there.
Okay,
right?
you.
Okay. And conveniently, they, apparently me, don't make it out of that 50 square miles. Who's to say how it happened? You're arrested in Idaho, but you're taken to Wyoming because they have federal jurisdiction. Here's where the loophole comes in. According to Article 3, Section 2 of the Constitution, a trial must be held in the state where the crime was committed. In this case, Idaho. So they send you right back to Idaho for your trial. But the Sixth Amendment says that your jury must be made up of people from the state and district where the crime was committed. So that's the state of Idaho and the District of Wyoming. The only place in Idaho that meets both those requirements is the 50 square miles in Yellowstone National Park. And according to the census, the population of that land is 0. Since it's literally impossible to hold up both parts of the Constitution, they can't hold a trial, and you should be free to go. The only reason this wouldn't work in the Montana section is because people actually live there, so they could make a jury.
I have to imagine there's something in the government to where they're like, we can't let this happen. What do we do?
Interestingly, the government hasn't done anything. Now, hold on, before you go out and do something you might regret, there's no way of knowing if this would actually hold up in court. My guess is that it wouldn't. In fact, Brian spends the back half of his essay talking about ways they could still get you for the murder, like charging you with crimes committed outside the zone of death. But again, that's all theoretical.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you about a way that somebody was actually able to get away with murder because of a legal loophole that has now been plugged. In 1985, the Colorado State Legislature passed their version of the Stand Your Ground law. They nicknamed it the Make My Day law. Here's what it says. If someone illegally enters your home, you believe they're going to commit another crime in your home, and you think that they might use force against you, you can use force, even deadly force, against them. If you meet all three of those requirements, you'll be immune from prosecution.
I have to say that naming it the Make My Day law is impressively sadistic. Stand Your Ground makes it sound like it's a legal defense.
Yeah.
Make My Day sounds like you enjoyed it.
Like you left the door open on purpose. That law was meant to give people the right to protect their homes. But almost 30 years later, a couple criminals ended up finding a loophole. So it's February 12th, 2011. The Sterling Correctional Facility. Inmate Antero Alanis was serving a life sentence for a completely separate case. Interestingly enough, though, he and his cellmate, Aaron Bernal, they were described as model prisoners. Didn't cause any trouble for the staff or the other inmates, pretty much just kept to themselves. Which is why what ended up happening to them was so shocking. One night when Antero and Aaron were just hanging out in their cell, another prisoner, Cleveland Flood, walked in. Now, Cleveland was the opposite of Antero and Aaron. He was known as the bully of the cell block. Even investigators knew about his reputation. And that night, Antero and Aaron were his targets.
It sounds like it's going to be one of those cases where it's like, because he's such a terrible person that they just believe them on the grounds of the law.
Well, in the end, it didn't even matter how bad of a person Cleveland was because they were able to use the law to its full extent. Let me explain. Cleveland closed the cell door behind him and pulled out a shank. He demanded that Antero and Aaron hand over all the items they got from commissary. Now, no one knows exactly what happened next, but a few minutes later, Antero and Aaron came out of their cell calling for help. When prison staff arrived, they found Cleveland on the floor of the cell. He had been stabbed 90 times. Aaron had a couple of cuts and bruises, and Antero definitely looked like he was involved in some kind of fight. Eventually, investigators arrested Aaron and Antero for Cleveland's murder. But both guys ended up getting all of their charges dropped. Why? The Make My Day law. You see, the way the statute was worded allowed for the prisoners to claim their jail cell as a dwelling. So Antero and Aaron successfully argued that A, Cleveland illegally entered their dwelling, they didn't want him to be there. B, they believed he was going to commit another crime in their dwelling because he said he was going to steal their stuff. And of course, C, they were afraid he was going to use force against them because he literally had a shank. So Antero and Aaron got their case fully dismissed, even after the state tried to appeal it.
It doesn't feel as much like a loophole. Like, this one feels like a legitimate, just like, use of the law. Like, yes, technically they were in prison, but like, they were model citizens. There's no reason to distrust them.
Well, the state of Colorado would heavily disagree with what you believe.
Uh-oh.
Unsurprisingly, Colorado amended their Stand Your Ground law in 2016. They said the law doesn't apply to anyone in a detention facility. But that's how 2 inmates ended up getting away with murder.
This is the age-old question, right? It's like how to get away with murder.
Yeah.
You have 3 answers. Be Disney, do it in one specific section
spot
of
in
Yellowstone, or just lure somebody onto your property, hand them a knife,
And then let them walk into your cell.
That's how you get away with murder.
I would like to be very clear that I do not endorse anything that he just said. Don't murder people.
Unless...
Nope.